Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Now that we have water channels, fountains, baradari, chabutara, sloping water cascades. This is a very interesting one that is called chadar. Chadar in Hindi is basically a kind of wrapper. So, it is something like this. Let me draw it in the paper. I'll show you. The chadar is a kind of sloping pallet like this, which is kept on a slope like this, and then it is scalloped in this form. Now, what happens is when the water falls from here, it gets split into two other parts, and then it flows to the next, So, if you see this, it's almost like a fish scale that they have developed. This is what is the chadar or sloping water cascade. Water is released over here at this particular edge in just like a sheet of water. So, this water, when it is trying to flow down this, it falls from one to the next, to the next, to the next. So, naturally it breaks the water into small droplets. Once it breaks the water into small droplets, naturally small droplets get absorbed by the air, and then ultimately the air temperature gets reduced. This is a wonderful way of cooling. One you have seen in the Spanish ground, that where they had a very shallow channels, wide shallow channels for evaporative cooling. This is also a cooling, but not directly by evaporation. This structure can be even indoor. The moment it breaks, so naturally smaller particles of water just floats in the air, and air absorbs it, reduces the temperature. This is one of the very interesting parts that they have used. I have seen this been used in another very Indian landscape styles, which is in Deeg, very close to Delhi. In Deeg also I have seen this, they have used it. In fact, I consider that they have emulated from the Mughal. Okay. Then that is chadar. Other than that, we have the low height central vegetations, large and high peripheral vegetation. So, what happens is, let us think about it. The entire landscape of Mughal landscape will have a green carpet at the base, the whole area divided into 4 parts. It is like as if divided into this. It may be rectangular, it may be squarish. Now, this is 1, 2, 3 and 4 gardens. That is what makes it 4, means char in Hindi, and garden, each one is such garden. Whichever Mughal example that you will see, it cannot be deviating from this rule, and this is what was pioneered, or rather propagated by Babur. The Rambagh is the first example that we do see. Now, there have been several exercises or several experiments on this, whether this will be the minor axis, this will be the major axis, whether the water will flow through this, also flow through this, and then within this you have a space where they have placed one small podium here. This is what is that chabutara. Now, here there can be an architectural structure. It can be a mausoleum like tomb, it can be palace, it can be or a retreat for the rulers, whatever it is. That particular structure, if it is elevated, I am just trying to show you through my sketch here, that if it is elevated and this is a structure and you have archways and the water is flowing below. So, water is flowing below, this is what is your baradari, and the rulers used to sit here and they used to enjoy the flowing water below. These are the 3 things which are very important part of Mughal landscape styles. Now, if I try to compare with respect to this, before I come to the examples of the Mughal landscape, if I just compare with respect to this, baradari was there also in Spanish landscape, but chabutara was not there. This chadar was not there. That makes Mughal unique. More than that, this is the green carpet that they have created with grass. On the edge, they will have high vegetations. On this particular edge, high vegetations, and here they will put low height vegetations. It may be conifers, so small conifers. So, what happens is you have a green edge on either side of this, over which I am just trying to use the color that I have in front. Is this is the portion where the water is flowing. This is the area through which the water is flowing, and within this you have the fountains. This is that chabutara and this is the baradari, and then you have the entrance gate. If I compare this again with the Spanish, yes, they have an entrance gate, they have the baradari, they also had vegetations, but here, since they have always made it flat, most predominantly flat, then all these are nothing but high vegetations. These vegetations that they have used in the Mughal garden essentially to protect, first of all, there is a wall. The wall is for physical protection, and just before this we have a series of large trees. Those large trees have some other benefits or some other utility. In terms of landscape, this has to be understood. What is the utility of this? Let us take the case of Agra. This is not really very much true or effective in the case of Kashmir. In Agra, what happens is, since it is a hot arid area and it is mostly devoid of the vegetative cover of the land, so naturally the wind erosion or rate of wind erosion is very high. So, high wind, uninterrupted wind, when it is flowing over the surfaces surrounding that particular gardens, that used to loosen the small soils, and that soil now becomes small particles, ultimately floats in the air with the wind flow. That particles used to flow over the entire area. Just to make it a filter of those particles, the large trees worked. So, the large trees having a large leaves were essentially the feature. So, if you look at it technically, it is not simply for aesthetics or for good looks or for recreations. They have used it for very, very technical reasons for their protection. So, it is in Mughal garden, you have the edges which are filters. The edges are the filters. We have the carpet in the center. We have the water channels crossing, and we have a place to sit and perform. The performers sit in the center. We have the elevated baradari from where you view it, and then the pathways along the water. So, what happens is, this is the pathway which will be running, and there will be crossovers. Of course, there will be crossovers over this water everywhere. So, you cross like this. So, somebody enters from here, can always take this path and ultimately can change to this particular path, ultimately going target to this. So, this is how it is, but so regular, so geometric that it has earned its unique identity in the history of landscape architecture. This has to be understood. Okay. Let us see some of the examples. Now, where we are saying that it has been primarily developed in Agra and Kashmir. In fact, the concept of Mughal garden style is a replica of the carpets, and the replica of the carpets or such idea came from Persia. So, Babur, when he came here, first invaded India, at that time he got that concept in the back of his mind and he tried it here. So, the entire Mughal landscape looks like a carpet, green carpet. All the squares, they are also subdivided with multiple such patterns. Those patterns are done with florals or beds, flower beds, but they are never very high hedges. So, when you look at any landscape, Mughal landscape, you will find that from any point you can see the entire landscape like a carpet, and majority of the surface area is green, very well manicured lawn, and in between the patterns. So, only the patterns got changed, but however, even if the patterns got changed, the patterns also remained within the main structure or of the patterns of the Mughal architecture. So, what we see in the Mughal screens, we call jali in Hindi, Mughal screens, in which we find the profile of squares, octagons, hexagons, combination of such, they are also replicated in those patterns of the plantations. Small plantations means I am talking about the flower beds. They have used that too, but yet it has never dominated the entire landscape. So, it is, when you look at it, only one point is, in a Mughal garden, if you enter, and you stand at the edge and look at the end, you see the entire Mughal garden at a stretch. So, comparatively with respect to Spanish, in Spanish landscape, if you want to experience a Spanish landscape, then you have to traverse through every space that they have designed. In Mughal landscape, you stand in one corner, see the other corner, finished. The whole view is done. There is no obstructions or visual obstructions. This idea of segregation, creating climaxes, I will discuss in another set of lectures, maybe the next week. Again, I will cite and bring forth these examples. So, in Mughal garden, it is at one shot you have a full view. In Spanish garden, it is not. So, for Spanish garden, you have to travel from one place to another for experiencing, but well regulated. Mughal gardens example, if you when we searched, we found that it is not. It has, though it is, we are saying that it is generated in India, but they have also spread it to some regions. In these regions, so we have some examples in Pakistan. Also, we have some examples in Afghanistan, some examples in Bangladesh. I am just citing few examples of India, then other countries. Take note of the pictures that I am showing here. Nishad Gardens in Kashmir, Rashtrapati Bhavan in Delhi. This is interesting to note. Liutin has designed the New Delhi, and he designed the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and he really recognized the utility or the superiority of this Mughal garden, and he has implemented this Mughal garden in the Rashtrapati Bhavan of Delhi. So, idea is, if there is a good best practice which can be emulated, he has done it, but this has been done quite later, much later, many years later than the Mughal garden got developed. Safdarjung's tomb in New Delhi, Humayun's tomb in New Delhi. If you look at this, just look at one of the pictures which I am focusing with my cursor. Look at this. The main tomb is in the center, Humayun's tomb, though it is stationed at the central point, maybe drawing all attention of the viewer. Surrounding it is a garden. So, in this Mughal garden, let me also explain. It may be a case where this is the garden and the mausoleum or the palace or the structure may be at the center. It may also be other Mughal gardens in which this is the garden and then we have the tomb or the mausoleum at the end. Humayun's tomb is this example, Sikandra, which is very close to Agra, also this example, and Taj Mahal is this example. In Taj Mahal, we have the mausoleum at the end. So, the point is, whether it is at the end or at the center, wherever it is, Char Bagh never changed. This is what is the uniqueness of Mughal garden. So, in this, if you look at it, this is one corner of one bagh, one square, another square here, another square here, another square here. The area is quite large. So, Mughal gardens usually is quite large in scale. The moment you try to emulate the Mughal garden in a small scale, it looks to be miniaturized and it looks to be out of scale. So, the scale of Mughal garden is quite grand, contrary to the Spanish. In Spanish, it could be a very small scale. I have shown you examples. So, the scale matters. If you make a very small, say you have a front garden in your house and then you try to make a Mughal garden, we will appreciate this for your diligence of working and creating a Mughal garden, but the thing is that is really not a Mughal garden. The garden has to have a grand scale. Okay. Shalimar Bagh in Srinagar, Mehtab Bagh in Agra. There are many other small gardens in Agra. Ram Bagh, this is what I was referring to, 1, 2, 3, 4 squares with the central spines at the water. Taj Mahal, if you look at this Taj Mahal here, this is the entry point, and then we have this as a garden in the center, in which the central spine of water is running from here to the edge. Other examples, Roshnara Bagh, Achwal Gardens, Khusru Bagh, Kutsia Bagh, Brindaban Garden, I'll come to Vrindavan Garden for discussion purposes. These were originally done. Vrindavan Garden has been done later. Pari Mahal, Yadavindra Gardens, Pinjore, these are all emulations. Chashma Shahi and Verinag. These are historical gardens. Vrindavan Garden, when in Mysore, when they have developed this, they have tried to emulate the Mughal garden. The same concept. If we combine, see basically what happened in in Shalimar Bagh and all, they had a different domains. I think I have a sketch I'll show you with respect to that. I'll explain. In Pakistan, it's a Shalimar Garden again, Shadra Bagh, Lahore Fort, Hazuri Bagh, Hiran Minar, Tomb of Jahangir, Chauburzi, and Mughal Garden Wall. Interestingly, in all cases, if you look at it, you will find that you will be able to identify Charbagh. And the moment you identify Charbagh, maybe the scale varies from one to another, maybe the central museum sits in different positions, but that gets the popularity or identity of a Mughal garden. In Bangladesh, we have Lal Bagh Fort, and in Afghanistan, we have Bagh-e-Babur. There may be many more examples. We could get at least this much of examples for your purpose, but there could be many more examples, and we will be happy if you know any more, and if you could identify any more Mughal gardens or such other styles, please feel free to communicate in the forum, and we will share with all of you. Now, what is the feature then Mughal garden? I am just summarizing it. It is rectilinear layouts within walled enclosure. First, like this. Second is use of pools, fountains, and canals, like this, flowing from one level to another. In Agra, it is not, but in other places in Kashmir, they took the advantage of the sloping hills leading to the Dal Lake, so naturally they have done it. So the idea is the water has to flow. It is not static water. Large gateways and high walls, like this. Use of concept of Charbagh. In this, if you focus this central point here, where my cursor is there, this is what is the chabutara I was referring to. If you go to Fatehpur Sikri, I don't have the picture of Fatehpur Sikri here. If you go to Fatehpur Sikri is a combination of many such profiles, in which there is one place where Tansen used to sit and sing. It was channels, crossing channel of water, and in the center there was a chabutara, slightly elevated podium, in which Tansen used to sing, sitting over there. This is the kind of thing that they have followed. Incorporation of geometric symbols within gardens. As I said, that all the geometric symbols that they have used in the architecture of jalis or nets or meshes or screens in the building elements, they have also followed it here. If they have done that for line works on the surfaces, they have also used it in the gardens, like this. And also the inclusion of various types of trees, colorful flowers, and grass lawns and birds. So basically, they have created out of nothing in a large hot arid region, they have created the gardens, which becomes a real retreat or a place of respite. And what happened is, historically when Babur had developed this, if you look at it, Babur first developed this, then other rulers, his descendants, did not follow this much, but Jahangir did it. Jahangir took this concept, and ultimately he built this in Kashmir. So most of the landscapes of Mughal styles, they are available in Kashmir. Later on, Shah Jahan built for the mausoleum in memory of his wife Mumtaz. He did it in Agra, and Taj Mahal became the world famous, one of the wonder of the world. If you look at it chronologically, Taj Mahal came quite late. So Rambagh was the first one, then the others. So who followed this system of Charbagh or the Mughal garden styles creation? Babur, then Jahangir, and then Shah Jahan. After Shah Jahan, his son Aurangzeb, who became the ruler, he had no interest in all these things. So Mughal garden died his own death. Mughals were no longer there. So, Mughals did not build anything. So, Mughal garden, the last example that we see is the Taj Mahal. Wherever you are finding any more, they are emulations of that. Okay. So, in Rashtrapati Bhavan it is emulation, in Vrindavan Garden Mysore it is emulation. What are the elements? Shallow channels with flowing water, same concept of Spanish. Stone chadar, this is what I was trying to draw, scallop to break the water surface to create sparkles. So, sparkles of water as well as reducing the temperature. Smooth trimmed carpet of grass lawns. Deep well with raised water channel. This is important to be noted. Deep well, because see, in Spanish landscapes they were endowed with sloping hills. So, the molten snow water used to come by gravity, but in Agra it was flat, and they had, of course, in Agra whenever this Taj Mahal was built, it was Yamuna river next to it, but the thing is it was at a higher elevation, Yamuna was lower. So, they had to resort to lifting of water and then flowing, contrary to the Spanish. In Spanish it is a gravity flow, but in Mughal the water was lifted up either from the well or from the nearby river, and then ultimately through an elevated channel waterway they released it to the chadars and then to the canal, and that water is to flow down to the drain. So, every time the water is to be replenished. This is what it is. Nowadays what we are doing is we are having a circulation of water with the pumps and motors. Other elements, Chabutara, the place where we sit, flat lawns, fountains at different heights, and the Baradari. This is the house at the elevation. Other elements, structural monuments, tombs, stone paved pathways, distinct zones. What is the landscape character if you try to understand this? We have a unified garden with a structure. Unified garden with a structure with a difference, not like Spanish. In Spanish the structure and the garden got unified absolutely one after another, complementing each other. In this it is just an adjoining element. The garden divided into major squares, 4 major squares as I had discussed, regular rectangulars or square, but geometric, strong central axis with minor transverse axis, terrain matching with the terrain of the region. In Agra it is flat, in Kashmir it is in slope. It's in slope. In Nishad Bagh they have multiple tiers or terraces. In fact, Nishad Bagh it is said that they have divided into 12 such terraces, and each terrace is representing one of the zodiacs. That means the water and the garden is coming from one level to the next level to the next level to the next level, ultimately going to the Dal lakes. So, this is how it is. This will give you an idea that how it is flowing from one point to another. Exploiting terrain through terraces. High protection walls around the garden for security and also for screening. Protection from dust and hot sand-laden air. Highly repetitive pattern on the garden floor. Geometric ornamentation with hedges, flowering plants, but it is monotonous. It is monotonous because from one point, I said already, from one point you can see the whole garden. So, if you walk farther, closer and closer, already you have seen the things earlier. So, it might become a little bit monotonous, but the thing is it is a creation, it is one style, and we can learn from it and we can use it whenever it is applicable. Low height vegetation at the central zone, large height vegetation at the boundary for filtering sands, exploiting stream. Strong focal point created by structure like monuments, baradari, minarets. The Mughal gardens can be divided into certain types. One is a tomb garden, another is a terrace gardens, another is a palace gardens, another is a plain gardens. Tomb garden is Taj Mahal, in which the tomb is placed. This is Yamuna river, this is the tomb, you have the entry, you have a large plaza from where you enter, and then ultimately this is what it is. In fact, in this garden, Taj Mahal, the Char Bagh or the 4th square has been made really square. Okay. In other gardens there had been some variations. So, it is a community zone, it is called Taj Ganji Bazaar. This is the portico from where you enter. Then we have the garden, this is what is a garden. Then we have the holy zone, we have the mosque and mausoleum. Then we have the river, and there is another garden. History says that Shah Jahan had a dream of building another mausoleum here. History says it. I am not very sure about it. I did not get much of a very substantiated information, but history says that somewhere it is mentioned that he wanted to make another similar, but okay, before that his life almost got ended by imprisonment by Aurangzeb. Okay. So, this is what is Taj Mahal. In this, one interesting thing happens is the garden, the Mughal garden acts as a foreground to the structure, and Taj Mahal has become beautiful. Everybody says Taj Mahal is beautiful. I do not know whether it would have been really called beautiful if it did not have a kind of foreground like this. So, what happens is sometime to give an accentuating foreground, this kind of Mughal gardens can be very, very useful. Okay, this is from the entry point to this. You look at this kind of patterns of the pavements and all, which are very, very geometric of typical Islamic style. Mughal garden in New Delhi. Then we have Roshanara Bagh in New Delhi, and then we have Nishad Gardens in Kashmir, in which if I try to tell you this is a canal which is leading to the Dal Lake. Okay. This is divided into different zones. The topmost one portion is the ladies zone, then we have the king's zone, then we have the public zones, but here they have many other things. They have the Baradari, they have the orchards here, they have the zodiac terraces, they have the plane trees at this, they have the pool, retaining walls on the side, and the Janana garden here, the gazebo here, and the Janana building here. This is a sample of the Nishad gardens. This is some of the pictures. So, essentially when you are at the upper level, you can see the lakes at the downhill. So, this gives the idea. So, now when you how we would analyze this Mughal garden as a really true to the Mughal garden style, if you find that they are all divided into squares with a central axis and different structures. Achwal garden here. This picture I have shown here for one reason. Go by the rule of the Mughal garden, this is truly a Mughal garden, but where is it? In Jubilee Park, Jamshedpur, in Jharkhand state of India. Go by the rule, let us follow. This is a garden beyond which we have the other greens, which is not the rule of the Mughal garden, but once you enter this particular zone surrounded by tall Ashoka trees we call, but Polyalthia longifolia, the actual botanical name is Polyalthia longifolia. If you see this bounded, you will find that there is a central axis and there is transverse axis. There are steps, you step down from here to here to here, and ultimately you come through this path. It is a wonderful emulation of Mughal garden. Each of the center has lighted spouts. In the night they are with changing color, that attracts very much. The whole garden, if you look at it, it is not the Mughal garden, but a small component in this is a Mughal garden. This is also possible. What happens is whenever you are trying to learn from the history and trying to emulate it, it is not necessary that you have to recreate another Mughal garden wholly. It is just a combination. And my experience of moving around this space is, whenever I am traveling along this, it gives me an idea that okay, it is almost like an English garden, and when I am within this domain, it is like a Mughal garden. So, this is how it is. Some pictures of this. Dalba Hill you see at the back. So, you are at the higher altitude here and the lower altitude here. This water ultimately flows and goes to this particular lake and then again pumped up. So, if we now compare with Spanish and then Mughal, this brings us to the end of the Mughal garden discussion. Mughal is very regular, very geometric, mostly on flats. Spanish is irregular in placements, but they are regular in its own individual shapes. They have also used the same idea of pavements, running water channels. In Mughal gardens, if you stand at one particular point and then look at the entire garden, you have a full view of it, so it makes it slightly monotonous, where Spanish garden it doesn't. It is always with some kind of surprises or excitements. But however, if you look at it microclimatically, then Spanish and the Mughal gardens are very much in a similar line. They have used the flowing water in the hot arid regions for cooling the air. So that brings us to the end of the discussion on Mughal garden. We will discuss the other styles. Thank you.